It's Thursday, November 21st. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast presented by healthcare.gov. And it is a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Nate Tice. Nate, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. I'm breaking out the hoodies. We're moving on to hoodies now. When the head needs a garage, that's what the hoodie's good for. You know, that's actually an old line. Do you remember the old Bill Belichick sweatshirt? Like just the plain gray one?
Yes.
You know, yeah. I had one.
Not that, like pre-sleeveless?
Yeah, so what? The one that he would make sleeveless. That nice. He would cut off the sleeves of them. I still own a version of that sweatshirt. My dad got it for me in 2006. It's almost 20 years old. It is literally one of the most comfortable sweatshirts you ever gonna have. Has no logo on it. So that's why I loved it. Because it was like my dad was switching teams. So I was like, I don't want to keep getting like Vikings, the Jaguars, the Bears, all that stuff. So I had that. And then Belichick kind of like made that sweatshirt kind of famous. Like, because he wore it and he kept it in circulation because he kept wanting to wear it. But the commercial for it was, they would say the hoodie when you know that the head needs a garage too. And I just always, that line has always stuck out with me about the hoodies. But shout out to the NFL and the great sweatshirts. Maybe I'll wear it next week. It's ugly. It's brutal. I don't think it's even comfortable anymore because I've washed it 5 million times, but I have to give it a shout out. Old NFL equipment stuff.
I mean, that is pretty incredible that you have an item of clothing from 2006. That's commendable.
I don't know if that's incredible in a good way. It's
I said commendable.
Oh, commendable. Okay. Okay.
I said commendable. I didn't really render a good or bad judgment on it. I'm commending you for that. You know, as somebody that gets sick of clothes really quick and you know, growing and shrinking and growing, it's too much. So yeah, I'm proud of you. Honestly, yeah, I'm proud of you for that one. So yeah, no, look, I wish I could wear some damn hoodies here. The weather can't make up its mind as to what it is here.
Is it warm
in Southeast Virginia? Yeah, it's a little like high 60s, low 70s. Yeah, it's
50 here in Vegas. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's a weird climate. We'll just leave it at that. We are not gonna break down climates here on today's pod. We'll save that for the premium feed, of course, and we'll get Andy on a few takes on that one. And you know, with his private jet, he needs to have a few takes on the climate. But we're gonna put a pin in that. We're gonna put a pin in Andy's private jets. We'll get back to that later. But for today, we'll do what we always do here on the Thursday pod. We jump into the fantasy film room. Bring it in nice and cozy. We've got a lot of good stuff to get to today. We got a new segment to debut later. Of course, we're going to get to Thursday night football. But before that, we're going to talk through a big trending topic as we always do. And today we've got a little bit of a fun wrinkle on this. And you guys know, if you listen to the pod, we love a good meter on this show. Shout out to the People's Panic Meter. But today, just in time for kind of the fantasy playoffs, the stretch run, we're going to look into some players that maybe have emerged as reliable or they're maybe trending down lately. So we're going to try to decide whether we trust these players. We're going to do that via the Fantasy Bros Trust Meter. Shout out to, if you're watching this on YouTube, you got a great visual here from our guy Jaxon, who, you know, designer in chief here. The Fantasy Bros Trust Meter has 3 tiers. First tier is trust me, bro. This is the highest level of trust. This means we have complete faith in this player. That is not to be shaken. The second tier is no idea, man. This one we could go either way. And the last one is I'm a pass on that one. And that's just, we do not trust this situation at all. So we have a bunch of names to get through, Nate. But we should start at quarterbacks. And I know that you said, we were joking in the pre-show chat about, everybody's got takes on rookie quarterbacks. Well, guess what, buddy? We're going to talk a few rookie quarterbacks
yes, we are.
in this section. And let's start off with Jayden Daniels here. I did also pull some Yahoo internal data on some player transactions and things just to show that these are some trending players. We're going to start talking Jayden Daniels here, who him and Terry McLaurin have actually been involved in a bunch of trades recently. I know like the public league trade deadline has passed, but people can still make trades, things like that. I read off a bunch of the stats yesterday, Nate, for Jayden Daniels the last 2 weeks. It's not just like, oh man, things have not been good. It's been awful the last 2 weeks. He's 24th in adjusted net yards per attempt over the last 2 weeks. He's 27th in fantasy points per dropback. His pressure to sack ratio is tied for the most of the last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco. Not where you want to be. If you're Jayden Daniels, Joe Flacco should not be in the same sentence, but we know that was an issue for him in college. So let's talk through this situation right now with Washington. Where are we at? Because this was the offense that we said we were most pleasantly surprised by. Yeah. And things have really gone to hell here the last couple of days.
It's a little bit of it's a combination of a few things, like most things in football. There is some worries, some concerns. I actually broke down the Washington last week. I put my stank on their offense a little bit with an article, just like as I like to do. But reading that article or writing that article and really studying them it's a high tempo offense, which is going to get to a lot of plays. It's creating a lot of simple looks for defenses. But the thing is now is the tape's out there. And you can see the better defenses like the Steelers and the Eagles, who the Commanders have played the last 2 weeks, are kind of taken away the staples of this Commanders offense. They've just made it hard. They've made it hard on third down, especially. The Commanders on early downs were more like 10th, 11th, 12th in a lot of stats I looked at, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere in that range as opposed to 1, 2, 3. And what was really driving this offense was third and fourth down, which is always a hard discussion to have because, the planning, the situation, how long your third downs are, and the quarterback execution, it's all parts of it. Protection, of course, but it's kind of been shown that it can be a little bit high variance from game to game, or if you've been really hot for a while, is it sustainable? It's kind of fallen off a cliff. No pun intended. But the Commanders, yeah, I know. Sometimes I do that. Cliff with a C. But with the Commanders was for 8 weeks, 9 weeks, they were up there with the Chiefs as the best third down team. They were the best third and long conversion team, by conversion rate, I should say. They hadn't missed a fourth down attempt the entire year going into the last 2 weeks. That's fallen off a little bit. And this ties to Daniels a little bit because he's selective when he pushes the ball. He prefers to work outside and underneath, and he's very accurate with that. He likes to just pick his chances to push the ball. But when everything gets hard and you create more third and longs, that kind of nickel and diming can now just create bad situation after bad situation after bad situation, which his play style hasn't really been able to overcome. On top of it, he has a hurt rib. And when he's not getting hit, okay, you don't really feel it as much. But when you're getting whacked over and over, like he was against the Steelers, a little bit you could see it wearing on him. It's body blows with a hurt rib. Probably if I had to guess, maybe a broken rib, because they were originally talking about him missing time. And you can play with a broken rib. It just sucks, especially if you have to throw and breathe and get hit there and everything. So I would just say that Daniels, I don't think is going to reach those highs that he did early in the year. But it's not going to be maybe as bad as this, especially if they play the Cowboys. The Titans might be a little wonky, but some of the matchups remaining are kind of, they have to play the Eagles again. But I don't think it's going to be those highs. I do think there is going to be a drop off. This has happened to every Cliff Kingsbury offense since 2019 when he was with the Cardinals. They have taken a drop in the second half of the year, and almost always it was in week 10. And it was like just right on time. It happened again this year. Do I think Daniels, oh my God, it's a bust. He's going to be the worst player? No. Still a good player. Still done plenty of good things. It's just I don't think he's going to reach those highs. I think his scrambling is going to come down a little bit, which is a big positive for him, especially in fantasy and as a player. So I think there's just, now he's kind of be more of a middling fantasy quarterback as opposed to a guy that was really up there for especially the first couple of weeks when he was getting all that rushing.
Yeah, that's sort of how I'm feeling about it too. Is I don't want to panic about the situation, especially because these are two of the best defenses in the league in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia. Especially, what the Eagles have been doing lately is fantastic, and this Pittsburgh's been one of my favorite defenses all year. Especially, yeah. I think they're especially effective against a scrambling quarterback, especially a scrambling quarterback's not 100%. And I think it was, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, hasn't Romo done one of these like Commanders games recently? Obviously not on Thursday night, but he might have done the Pittsburgh game or something like that, because he was going on and on about ribs and things, because I played with broken ribs at least once in his career. Yeah. So and he was going on about it, like you can tell about this, that, and the other with the rib and everything. So it's good. It's almost kind of good they have a week 14 bye, and they do have to face the Eagles again after that. But for the most part, there are some bad secondaries on the slate here. We've got Dallas, we've got New Orleans, we've got Atlanta the rest of the season, and then that week 14 bye is really what I have my eye on. So I don't know, Nate, if we're in our three levels here, just kind of with everything that where Washington is, are we feeling trust me, bro, no idea, or I'm a pass?
I have an idea about no idea. That's what I would say. I'm putting in the middle, no idea that it could go either way, but I'm saying I do think there's going to be a drop off. So I do trust this offense though against some of these bad defenses, but I do think there's going to be a drop off from the highs they reach. So I'll say no idea, man, for our middle tier.
I like that. Still somebody that is a starting fantasy quarterback, but might not be in the Lamar tier anymore, the Josh Allen, the Jalen Hurts scam tier either from a fantasy perspective. Let's stick on the rookies tier.
It is a scam, isn't it?
Oh, dude. And you know
bad, man.
I've got Jalen Hurts on one really good fantasy team, so like I'm cool with living the scam. Yeah. Even though, and I don't really have that many very good Saquon Barkley teams, so I'm just kind of like, you know what? I'm out here cheating.
Hey, another tackle at the one. Hey,
something in the water with the Philadelphia running back room that we need to investigate, because it doesn't matter which running back is there; they're all getting tackled at the one, and
there's something at the 2-yard line that trips them. They're just like there's an invisible line,
baby. It's wild stuff. Anyways, let's stick on rookie quarterbacks here, and we got to talk Bo Nix. We discussed him a little bit yesterday on Football 301, and kind of. I think I'm maybe trending a little bit more positive than you are, but I know you're certainly more positive than you were on Bo Nix to start the year. He was the 4th most added player in Yahoo leagues today. He was a big time waiver pickup. He's been trending up in fantasy for sure. I think if he's not in the top 10 fantasy quarterbacks right now, he is right on the edge there. So Bo Nix, what's been going on lately, and where are we with the trust meter right now with Bo Nix?
I trust a lot of the surroundings. There's a high level of trust on the surroundings, but Nix is playing just really sound. And I talked about this a little bit on Football 301. It's just he's not making mistakes, which is huge, because he is going to have some rushing ability, which again I know is huge in fantasy. He is a good runner, and also not getting the interceptions, not getting bad fumbles, not putting the ball in harm's way. He is going to be. Are you going against a bad defense? He's going to do great. Like they're going to be a bad defense beater. What's pretty sweet about the rest of their schedule, there's some iffy defenses on that schedule.
Yep.
So I actually am trust me, bro, for fancy terms with Bo Nix.
Yeah.
Real life terms, it's still more of a wait and see. I got to see more, but I do think that this offense, the offensive surroundings, and Nix's play style, it's going to lead to like their passing games a lot of chunks. So it's going to be in screens that the screens have been working, especially if you go against bad defense. That's going to lead to not a lot of bad plays and a lot of potentially very juicy plays. A lot of like where he's getting 200 and something yards off of maybe not some high difficulty throws. But then on top of it has the scrambling, the Taysom Hill jokes we have made. They're not shying away from it. They didn't have to do it last game because the Falcons defense is so mid. But in the future, that's going to crop up. Like in the red zone, he's going to get some rushing totals, maybe 20, 30 yards, but he's going to get some rushing TDs thrown in there, I think, as the season goes along. So, yeah, fantasy-wise, trust me, bro. Real football terms about where Bo Nix is in the rookie rankings and all the quarterback rankings, yeah, I'm still wait and see on him because of just what he's being asked to do. But fantasy, definitely trust me, bro.
Yep, I'm with you. It's definitely it's a trust me, bro, for fantasy too. And it's worth noting just from a rushing perspective, like over the last 4 weeks, 4 yards rushing, 36, -5, and 5. So it's actually been, and I shortchanged him. He's QB7 in fantasy right now on the season, which is crazy. I would not have seen that coming. And he's earning it through the air. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, where it's not that he's out there executing at a really high level from a conceptual standpoint or anything like that, but I think the offense is well designed and he's running that offense. And especially these big downfield play action shots, he's been very accurate there to me. Like when I watch him, I think from a placement perspective, he's giving guys chances to run after the catch. You know, guys like Lil Jordan Humphrey and, Devon Vele and stuff like that. I'm curious if you have any takes on any of these like Broncos non-Cortland Sutton pass catchers or anything, but I'm still kind of in discovery mode there myself, but guys that aren't necessarily like yak monsters, but he's setting them up for yards after catch opportunities, I think, with his placement, which is again just what the offense is asking him to do. So yeah, I mean, the rest of Bo Nix's career, I think we're still, like I said, like you said, in discovery mode of where that's going to go. But for the rest of the fantasy season against the Raiders, Browns, honestly Browns too, like they're not a good defense this year. They've got issues in the secondary,
especially if they go against a good O-line. They kind of fall apart because it's all based on the pass rush getting home, and their offense is just kind of whatever. So if that's not getting home, you can see their defense kind of just go, I'm good as the game goes along.
It's perfect for Jameis Winston. We'll talk about the Browns later.
Okay.
Week 14 bye, Colts, Chargers. That's the tough one, maybe. But then Week 17 fantasy championships against the Bengals. Bo Nix will be taking home some Superflex titles there in Week 17.
Do we see Herbert running around a little bit? You can do a lot against that Bengals defense right now, running or throwing. Yeah, you mentioned the other Broncos pass catchers. They're trying to get Marvin Mims going and getting him a lot of rushing touches as well out of the backfield. The stats haven't totally been there yet, but that's always interests me is when the coaching staff's going like, we're getting this guy going. And like, okay, do they add to it? Does he stay as a gadget guy?
Finally, they've only been talking about, I don't know if you've followed this, but they've only talked about getting Marvin Mims more involved basically since the moment that they drafted him. And we got it's funny because it's been easy to meme. We've got to find a way to get Marvin Mims more involved. We've got to find a way. And then he runs like 2 routes or something like that. But now they are finding a way to get, like they finally found that way. I don't know which rock they overturned or whatever here, but they finally found a way.
They're like, let's line him up in the backfield. But the guy that I'm hoping as a comparison for him or a path, one was not as highly drafted, is Rashid Shaheed from the Saints. That is there. I mean, I'm not saying that I think Shaheed is phenomenal as a deep ball guy. Like it's crazy how good of a tracker he is. Mims has some deep ball ability too. If you remember last year, they played the Commanders early in the year, I think.
Yeah.
And he went off in that game and then they're trying to get going. So I'm thinking like maybe that's the path for Sean Payton and everything. Sean Payton really likes his guys to have a role in his offense. I know that sounds kind of like, well, doesn't everybody? But he doesn't like to kind of intermix a lot of guys. He's just like, you are the X, you are the Z, you are my gadget guy. You are always in the slot. You are always on the outside. And Mims kind of seems that like this is taking over. He's always kind of had one of these guys. Even back in like 2006, he had guys like this, the Mims deep ball guy. So I'm curious about it. Maybe it's not going to really pay dividends this year, but I'm kind of interested in Dynasty Leagues about maybe just getting some shares of him just in case he turns into that, take the top off guy, can have some boom weeks and your flex spot or something like that. Way deep stash. Also, they're trying to get Troy Franklin going a little bit. Bo Nix has missed him a couple times, but also Nix is just skinnier. He had some drops too, I believe. Like that's another. I'm interested in him too because they're trying to ramp him up a little bit, which always, again, I'm trying to read the tea leaves of the coaches.
It is really funny that you typically think about shout out Adam Levitan and Establish a Run, the shower narrative, the two guys that have played together, they've showered together, they know each other, they come from the NFL, they play in college together. Yeah. It's weird because these guys seemingly don't really have that great of chemistry.
No chemistry. I know. I'm glad you said that because I thought it was just me. Okay, good. They don't. They do not have chemistry.
But they also didn't really have that chemistry in college. I actually think, and because there was a lot of Dynasty bros that were really high on Troy Franklin, like very, very high
his
on
underlying
Troy Franklin.
Stats are pretty ridiculous, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like then I watched him play and like I charted him. I thought he was fine. I thought he went. I thought he went later in the draft than he should have, but some of that was at least I heard due to character issues and things stuff, like that. But I thought he was like a solid like 3rd round pick. He went in the 4th round. But I would say watching Troy Franklin actually made me a little like, okay, I can see it a little bit more with Bo Nix. If you're just focusing on Franklin, because you're like, geez, this dude leaves a lot of stuff on the field, not just literally with the drops, but the stuff working over the middle. And I think that's because he's just not a trustable target working over the middle. And that's your number 1 receiver in college. Now he's got now he's got the big hosses in Denver with Sutton and obviously Reynolds at one point, but Vele and even little Jordan Humphrey, ironically, is a big ass target too. So yeah, it's like I think he has guys that fit with him a little bit better here.
Yeah.
So overall, I'm with you that, and even Marvin Mims too. I'm glad you brought him up just because I thought his route running as a rookie was terrible. And,
awful. It was like he never practiced it ever. It was so loose. It was hot. Which is crazy because Sean Payton doesn't put guys on the field unless they can run routes, which is so.
Well, and he's trying to make them on the field. So now I think they're finally figuring out a way to get him. So all this to say leads back into Bo Nix, even if I think Nate and a lot of people, and I'm still kind of a little skeptical, but trending positive skeptical about Bo Nix overall, I think we, from a fantasy perspective, are trusting it because this environment, I think, is a little bit more, is a little bit underrated. But let's go closer to your heart here, Nate. Let's talk Drake Maye for this last one here. Just fantasy point totals since he took over in week 6: 19.5, 20.8, 11.5, 15.7, 11.8, and then 18. So we've got some real deal usable fantasy weeks from Drake Maye here. What's your trust meter on this one, especially because I don't know how you feel about the environment here, but old Bo Nix is in a lot better environment than I think Drake Maye's in.
Yeah. Broncos are up there, top 5 offensive lines in the league, and the Patriots, I can safely say, are not in the top 5. Maybe not top 10, and maybe not top 20 either. My preseason prediction of it's not the worst offensive line ever is kind of right, but it might be still the worst offensive line in the league. So yeah.
But you were right though. I'll give you credit that you were right that this was discussed as you cannot put him back there because he's just gonna, number one, I think people misevaluated Drake Maye that he wouldn't be able to thrive in an environment like this, and two, that it was so bad that he was going to be actively harmed by putting out there. And I think objectively that is not true.
No, it's not true. Like even the sack he took against the Rams was just Braden Fisk, the defense tackle for the Rams, winning instantly. It was the fastest time to sack, I think, in the NFL this year. And so that wasn't like his head's spinning, he's looking every which way, or that it was just, hey, it happens. But with Maye, it's real life terms. It's like, oh yeah, trust me, bro, all the way. I've seen enough almost already. But I would say with some of the stuff, the surroundings, the defenses that he has to play against, I still almost am getting to trust me, bro range, because even if he goes against better defenses, he can run. And that is just what kind of interests me, is that I think the scrambling totals, even if they've been down the last few weeks, because he's kind of been like, even with the Rams, they were trying to keep him in the pocket. The Bears were trying to keep him in the pocket. But if things get loose, you play some more man-heavy teams. You play, I don't know, the Colts. You might have a lot of opportunities to create not only big plays, but with your arm, but big plays with your legs. He is kind of more of a. So I guess it isn't a no idea man if I had to give this the tier, but I do think he should be on everybody's roster as when they play some of the weaker defenses, even if the Cardinals are improving. If you need a guy there, like Maye can get you to that 20 points because he has a high usage rate as well, as they're throwing the ball more, and then on top of his scrambling as well. They're learning that how much they can trust him and everything. The receivers are, it's just it's pretty cool to see him like trust like Kayshon Boutte and like try these things, but it's like they're wasted targets most of the time. Like Boutte isn't coming down with these deep balls. Just wait until he gets a guy that can. But hopefully some of these pass catchers do catch up. Like, hopefully you have Hunter Henry on your roster because obviously he trusts him. But I will say that, like, I think this is a no idea man, but I do think he is very much should be, if you aren't like one of those ace quarterbacks and you're kind of like picking matchup spots and you have a couple quarterbacks in your roster going through it, like absolutely have him on there. I have him on some of mine because I just think that he is able to have maybe a spike week or at least a good week because of his rushing ability.
Yeah, the tough thing with him, because I think the way you put it, he has a high usage rate. I think so much of the burden of the offense is on him. Yeah. Because I don't trust any of these receivers at this point. I like the way you framed the Kayshon Boutte stuff, that it's nice that they're trying it. I mean, he's definitely been there almost every down X receiver, and he was a guy that was on like the roster bubble. It was, when you talked about the Patriots receiver rotation, it was like, oh, maybe Javon Baker emerges as the X receiver at one point, and then Boutte was like and some of the beat writers were very like, oh, Tyquan Thornton, he's going to start the season as the X, and they were right, he did, and that dude's on the Chiefs practice squad now, so that's how that went. So it's just been a constant rotation there. I don't think they've done Jalen Polk any favors, and I don't think Jalen Polk has done Jalen Polk any favors. Like, that is an everybody loses situation there. So it's just tough with these receivers because I think he could be let down any week. And I think that even if he is let down by his players against a Buffalo or an LA Chargers in week 17, he could still make that week all on his own. And then the receivers are so unreliable that it's weird in a matchup where, like against the Colts, if those dudes just don't win, and he doesn't get off a few scrambles, he could like bust out in your lineup. So this is clearly I have no idea, man.
No idea.
Right. So it really is.
I know. It's hard for me to grasp on because what he's done on a real football terms, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm trusting what I'm seeing. It's so good. It's funny because he's like, it's different than me than Nick's. Like the real football and the fantasy terms are different for these two. Like they're flipped. But that's exactly it. It's like there could be that, especially he plays like these. It's just not only that these defenses he faces at the end or the Patriots face at the end are not only just good, but they're just also like not beneficial to, or they're not like they're good in a way that doesn't really help have good stats for the quarterback because they make you nickel and dime. They make you just really focus on being consistently correct, which is like, it might be a game afterwards, now everyone just calls these people tape bros, that I apparently am one of them, but is that they will have a good game, but it's a 22 of 30 for 210 yards, because it's a bunch of cover two. It's a bunch of soft coverages. So they have to nickel and dime. My hope is when Maye plays these defenses, and I'm excited to see it, is whether he just goes bombs away. Because that's how you're supposed to beat them, is you sucker them up, and then launch it over the top. He's willing to do that. Do the receivers cooperate is a whole nother discussion, which is what we're getting at. Right. Jalen Polk, really, we did like kind of the most disappointing thing. He really is like one of my more disappointing players that I evaluated as a rookie. And again, when you're evaluating guys for the draft, it's year 3 is when you kind of like, they got to get like 50 starts under the belt before you're kind of like really feeling good about them. I'd say 40 starts, but like Polk, you're supposed to be trustworthy. I thought he was the smart, steady guy. He's never going to be a 1, but I think he could be a good 2, yada, 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 Robert Woods type guy in his career. And it's just how I never expected his head to be spinning like this. And it's palpable when you watch him. I mean, not only just the mistakes that he makes, but just also in between plays, which is it's just a curious case of Jalen Polk that I'm hoping that he ramps it up in the second half of this year and then maybe, into next year. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought I would maybe see a little bit more out of him. I mean, shoot, offensive linemen are catching touchdowns before he's even getting a target sometimes.
We can't open the Jalen Polk can of worms because
I saw you get squirmy as I started talking about it.
Well, because I said that on Reception Perception, the show, James asked me about this, and I was like, honestly, the Jalen Polk stuff makes me feel like a crazy person, and I wrote this in the rookie report too. That's on my site. What you just said there is 100% true, and like his head is spinning and he's not reliable. Like the two things that were great about him was he was a good blocker and he had great hands, and he can't catch and he's a terrible blocker in the pros. But so that's all true. But at the same time, Nate, like, what about his tape in college made you think he was going to be primarily an X receiver who in the games I sampled lined up outside on 84.9% of his snaps and was on the line of scrimmage for 68.2? And that came down because after he got himself in the doghouse after the Jaguars game and he didn't play for like 3 straight weeks, like then the game comes back. I think it was the game where he caught the 1-yard touchdown. I think it was the Bears. He's fine. Like in that game, he's taken almost all of his snaps behind the line of scrimmage. So to start the year, he is purely outside on the line, nothing like slot, and he's running 20.6% go routes, 6.9% corner routes. Like none of that. It's just such a horrible misuse of the player that like if he's not confident in himself, he's like, yeah, I'm doing a stupid role for me. I don't know. There's just like, it's one of those things where, again, we shouldn't open the can of worms here.
I know.
I could literally talk about this and nobody cares, but I could talk about this for an hour. But it's one of those things where the player has been, I think, set up to fail and then continues to fail and therefore doesn't earn any role catering. Right. So it's tough.
No, that's right, exactly right. Because when they do the catering stuff to like go like, okay, let's get him an easy one. He drops it or falls down or something. I mean,
false starts last week Gerard Mayo says, and Mayo set up the game. He's like, I'm 100% confident that would have been a touchdown. I'm like, well, so you hate Jalen Polk for sure.
Well, and then the Jags game in London, they designed a 2-point play, I think, for him, and he falls down. And it's just like, man, they're trying to get you going. And I mean, you could tell when they designed the 1-yard touchdown for him, like you could see the sideline going like, hey, you're good, right? All right, this is it. Rest of the year, right? Rookies, man. Now you see why NFL coaches just get like with the rookies. They're just like, I thought you were supposed to be this, man. Like, it's just rookies. Just sometimes their heads start spinning, man.
All right. Like I said, we shouldn't even open that can of worms, but I'm glad we talked about it. Let's talk about some running backs here and put them through the Fantasy Bro trust meter. Let's start with Tyrone Tracy, who is another guy that has been traded a bunch in recent weeks, which is interesting. Of course, the Giants are making a quarterback change. You're going to Tommy DeVito. I don't know. I'm curious about your DeVito scouting report here. And the real question here and what this comes down to, because I think I've been impressed by Tyrone Tracy, like legitimately, not forget fantasy, like just watching him. I think he's a good runner. He doesn't look like a converted receiver. The question really here, Nate, is what does this offensive environment look like rest of season, taking Danny Dimes out and putting Tommy Cutlets in? Too many Giants nicknames quarterbacks.
Oh God, they can't help themselves. I know every single one. Does Tyrone Tracy have something yet? Touchdown Tyrone, like something like that. They
if Drew Lock wasn't like the worst quarterback in football, apparently, maybe he could have got himself a nickname.
$5 million to just not do anything. Maybe could have kept on Saquon Barkley. That one actually
I'd
makes
take
me. That one
I'd
actually
take $5 million to do nothing.
Right. That's what. Oh man, 500 jokes just went through my head that I can't say. But watching that. the Giants offense, and especially, I mean, Giants fans right now are just going like they kind of like hate Tommy DeVito right now because it cost them Drake Maye. So they kind of are like, this guy again? Like, is he going to cost us another quarterback? I think with Tracy though, he's a trust me bro as far as talent and just the offense environment, because they're going to have to run the ball. You don't want Tommy DeVito throwing 30 plus times. And I think if he does throw a whole bunch, it's going to be a lot of designery touches, screens, play action shots, RPOs, which RPOs can open up stuff in the run game as well, especially if you tell the quarterback, hey, we prefer you to hand it off than throw on those RPOs. So I think also the teams are going against. We've talked about the Bucs a little bit. Yeah. You can kind of get after them in the run game, especially some stuff. They're going against the Cowboys. Anybody. We've seen enough prime TV games of the Cowboys. I don't think I have to break down anything there. Saints, you can get after a little bit. Ravens' run defense is pretty tough, but you can still get them. I mean, the Steelers were still working at it. It wasn't totally efficient, but you can get them a little bit. Then Falcons, then Colts. Falcons and Colts. I mean, those are pretty decent. That's a decent slate of games for a running back to go at. Is it always going to be super efficient? No, but I think he's going to get plenty of touches, and because they have to. And I think the talent's worth it. I'm with you. I liked him in the draft process. He went where I kind of thought he should go. I had like a 4th, 5th round grade on him, and he's been much cleaner than I was expecting. You said you don't see the former receiver stuff. Like, he's a cleaner runner than Rachaad White to me. And I was a fan of Rachaad White. But I just think his feel for the position, when the tempo stuff, like when to hit the accelerators through the hole, like he's got a good feel for it. So yeah, I'm a fan of Tracy. So this is a trust me, bro. With Tracy.
Yeah, I'm at trust me, bro, as well on this one. I like that you mentioned some of the RPO stuff with DeVito, because he did show a little bit of like reckless abandon as a scrambler, I'd call it. And I noted this yesterday, like his yards per attempt on outside throws is significantly better than Daniel Jones. I don't know that makes him a starting quarterback or anything, but he's willing to try stuff and willing to do things. And the real thing here with Tracy is that this is a guy who fumbled, that basically lost the game in Germany, but this is a coaching staff that really trusts him, and nothing is more emblematic than that, of the fact that like Devin Singletary is Brian Daboll's guy. And as soon as Tracy got on the field, they're like, okay, welcome back to the lineup, Devin Singletary, but you've lost your starting job to Tyrone Tracy. So I think Tracy, that schedule that you mentioned, is great. And I think DeVito he could probably keep this offense interesting enough that we can get a running back to survive here. So I'm with you on trust me, bro, on this one. Let's move to Chase Brown here, who Nate, Chase Brown has I want you to talk more about Chase Brown as a player, because right now, from a role perspective, the last 3 weeks, you almost cannot, I know this sounds like hyperbole, but it's true. You cannot dream up a better role from a fantasy running back perspective, because he's getting all the carries since Zach Moss went down, and he is getting all the passing game work. And Burrow has been very willing and almost intentional about checking it down to him. So he's been getting a bunch of gimmies in the pass game. So I think we know about the role. I want you to tell me more about like Chase Brown as a player, because I'm skeptical, especially if we're talking about him beyond, and I know we'll focus on him the rest of the season, like in fantasy championship runs and all that stuff, but I'm even talking about, like, is this a guy that you think could be the running back next year? Because that's the thing with these day 3 backs. We get caught in the small sample sizes. Like, I had people asking me this week about him as a dynasty trade option. I'm like, I always get nervous about trading like real deal receivers for these day 3 running backs when they're in the middle of a hot streak. Look no back like Dameon Pierce a couple years ago. It just, I don't know. That's the part that makes me nervous. So tell me more about him like as a player, because we know the fantasy role is about as good as it can get.
Yeah, that's, I mean, great kind of like way to kind of, even some of my hesitations, maybe I would say with Chase Brown, is that there's a reason they traded for Khalil Herbert. And I think they just want that running game that they want to go with Zach Moss types, the Joe Mixon types, even the Samaje Perine types. And what that is more of a bruiser, because it's just what this offense is. And Chase Brown is more finessey. And I would prefer him, actually. It's kind of funny. I would like almost like prefer swaps with other teams. It's like I almost want Roshan Johnson to be with the Bengals, and then if Chase Brown could go to the Bears or something of that sort. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Just role types. Is that this? He's going to get these touches, and touches, especially the receptions, every game. That the bottom is not falling out there. That is the attack of this offense, especially when the receivers are healthy. Joe Burrow is going to either hit them for the intermediate gain, or he's going to check it down. They get a lot of 3rd and shorts where he gets these easy dink and dunks. So he is a PPR wonder. And I don't think that's going to go away. And I think, though, that long term, his role is going to look more like Samaje Perine's when he was with the Bengals, where he's more of the 2 as opposed to the early down guy bruiser, and that rotates in, or a 60-40 split. That's long term. So like dynasty-wise. Redraft league, I don't think this role is changing. But because just this is where we're at with this year, even if Herbert gets in there a little bit more. Because I think with Chase Brown is that this running style, so much spread stuff, it's all these at you runs in between the tackles. Those are designed to maybe get you 4 or 5 yards, but it's a hard 4 or 5 yards. You have to run hard, you have to run thick, you have to run with purpose and everything. It's not really Brown's style. Like it's not matching his style completely. So that's why this is kind of the cap, I think you see rushing wise, that, you know, he can pop some off. He can get some more heavy usage like he did against the Raiders and everything. But it's just, this is not kind of the offensive attack for them is not conducive to he's more of a doubles hitter or more of a finesse runner, like a zone guy. They've kind of gotten away from zone. They've gone more into gap stuff and everything. So again, I like the talented guy. I think of him though more as a part of a 2-headed attack, and he's the finesse guy with a power guy. And I think they agree with that long term, but I just don't know if it changes this year at all. So yeah, it's kind of it's a trust me, bro, as far as what he's this year. Dynasty wise, it is more of a no idea, man, negative, more like a little bit lower down on there, because I just think he's going to always be more of a rotational guy than an ace of this rushing attack. This is what the offense is going to be. We talk about this with the Bengals. Like this is the Joe Burrow offense. So this is what that running back role is going to be. Catching wise, he's going to get it. I don't know if they want him to be taking these 12, 15 carries.
Yeah, maybe not to give Jason more work, but maybe we can have the meter go like, trust me, bro, I'm a pass. Like, because I think that's kind of how it goes here, because rest of the season, yeah, I mean, 24, 17.9, 16.8 fantasy points the last 3 weeks. Like that's going to keep on plugging away. And it really doesn't even matter about the schedule, because I think that passing game role is going to keep him going. So, but I think long term, I am still in that sort of, he almost might be in the I'm a pass zone, unless he just absolutely smokes the rest of the season. And that will be different from a fantasy perspective, if that makes sense. It won't even really be like production wise there, but
right.
Last running backs to hit. I don't want to be quick on this one just because we talked about them somewhat recently. Chuba Hubbard and the Jonathan Brooks rotation potentially coming back. Do you think this is a full trust me, bro, for Chuba Hubbard, even with Brooks coming back, just based on how he's played and everything, or are you a little more like nervous about it?
I still think it's trust me, bro, because they like him as the protection back too. So that's going to earn his right on 3rd and 4th downs. So that's huge, or passing downs in general. I think also, he's a vet they trust, and that Brooks is working back from a serious injury that now we're in almost end of November, and he's finally coming back from it. He's not going to be 100% week 1, even if he is playing Brooks. I mean, so I do still think it is trust me, bro, for at least the next 2 weeks. And then when Brooks is kind of works some rust off, I am not sure. But I do think that it's still going to be Chuba Hubbard's show for the next couple weeks. And I don't know if that's relevant to you in the playoff terms, but at least through the fantasy regular season. And then we'll see how they use Brooks and everything, especially because it's a wash season for them. It's like, all right, do we give him a bunch of touches, or do we just keep working him back and then build for next year, which is what I would do. I would not, but I'm not in charge of the Panthers. Maybe I could talk to Eric Eager or something like that about it. But shout out Eric. But I think
I gotta send Eric a DM and be like, what's the running back?
Yeah, I know. I don't use that connection enough, and I know it's what I've heard from.
I'm too much of a. I don't know about you. I can't bother people. I don't want.
Once the season starts, I don't bother anyone that I know at teams, unless they reach out to me, which none of them do, anyways. But because I just know how the season is too. It's just like you're just like. I mean, it's just kind of like how it is for us.
I was gonna say
40% version of it, but I don't know about you. You got 9 shows a week, so I don't know about you. But no, I
got a lot of free time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you that with the Chiefs on the schedule this week in week 12, I think Chuba's he's not getting his workload reduced again. They're not going to. I don't think that's something like, oh yeah, let's just throw in the rookie. And like see if he can swim against Kansas City's run defense and the way they're going to
like
throw pressures at you and things like
split,
that. Yeah,
80-20.
I almost think like 75-20. Yeah, maybe even like 80-20.
Somewhere in that split, and then maybe the last couple weeks, but that might not even matter for fantasy. They they start moving more Brooks in. So I think it's trust me, bro, for this year for Chuba. They'd love him. I mean, this is what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. They trust him. They like him. He's had a great year. And I don't think his role should be diminished that much this year.
All right, let's take our first break. We come back. We'll talk through a few wide receivers, tight ends, and then discuss who Nate is nerding out about. And I'm very interested to hear about this one.
Upset.
We'll get to that right after this break.
Upset.
All right, we're back. Let's talk some wide receivers here. JSN. I had to throw Jaxon Smith-Njigba on this one, Nate, because I want you to heat check me on this because I really am very excited about what we've seen from JSN. Kind of mentioned it to you a little bit yesterday that I feel the usage for him has been more intentional. I like the way that he and DK Metcalf coming out of the bye were working off of routes together that felt more like these things were in play with each other. So I know you kind of liked a little bit more of what you've been, I would say maybe mixed on Ryan Grubb so far, but I think we both felt good about what we saw coming out of the bye. So from JSN specifically, is he a guy that's in the circle of trust at this point?
Yes. How that game has made me feel, God, I hope it's just not a one game. Hey, extrapolate all this, but I'm going to. Is they were showing an effort to get him involved, JSN involved, and not just like, hey, a whole bunch of short slot targets. No, they used him on screens, a really cool screen in the red zone that I really liked. They used him on the outside where it was, I talked about this yesterday on Football 301, but he was on ball running an intermediate route, which an in-breaker, which I think is encouraging that it's not just, oh, this is Mr. 5 yards. We're not going to Wendell Robinson just a bunch of 5 yard, 4. Seriously though, like that's why I was getting scared. I was like, JSN isn't the most physically impressive guy. He's more of a steady Eddie. Does he just become this 4 catches, 46-yard guy, 6 catches, 52-yard guy? But now I see that they're trying to use him more in the intermediate role, intermediate route role, as opposed to just having DK do that. So they're mixing up their routes a little bit more, but also just the in-between football stuff, the blocking, the extended plays when Geno was working outside the pocket. Jason's a very smart player, and you can really feel that when you watch him. But it was really encouraging to me when Geno, this is the lad McConkey Hubbard argument, same thing. Geno breaks contain, his eyes went to JSN and not DK or not Lockett and not Noah Brown. Point. So that's encouraging to me. And I will say that's Noah Brown. But I think I guess this is trust me, bro. I'm like I've never been the biggest JSN guy. I've always just thought he was a little bit limited. I thought he was slot only. So to see him winning from the outside, even if it's a couple times, seeing him getting used on screens, and they're not little 6-yard screens. This is things that he took into an explosive play against a 49ers defense that we're a little lower on, but still a good defense. Just those little things. I thought, I said it yesterday, this was the best overall game I've seen JSN play as a pro. And not just total and sheer yards, but it's encouraging to me that I saw some more in-between stuff with the Seahawks. The offensive line getting better is better for JSN because then now Geno has more stuff to work from for the pocket. More of JSN's routes on third down become live. I know I'm talking about sides of my mouth. Those 5-6 yard gains, a lot better on 3rd and 4 than 3rd and 11. And we have to chuck it to DK because that's just the best play that we have. So it's a better offensive ecosystem is better for JSN as opposed to the other receivers, because he is a guy that will thrive in a better offense. I know this sounds stupid, like everyone was, but his role is better in a good offense, and it's more conducive for him because that's the type of player he is. So yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's trust me, bro, but JSN is just an interesting player for me. I feel like I'm going to be discussing him for the next 2 years trying to figure him out.
I really liked JSN a lot coming into the draft. Like, I thought he was not like a tier 1 prospect, you know, the guys that went this year or anything like that. But
absolute blue chippers. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Same with like prospects like Olave and Garrett Wilson and Drake London, like those guys, Jamar Chase, obviously, I think those guys are different breeds, but that next tier for me, I thought he was in his class, he was the only guy in that tier. Like, he was in a tier of his own in that class. And then it was the Flowerses and the Addisons and the Quentin Johnsons. Obviously, that's a mess. I had Downs in that tier too. So like that's sort of the way I viewed him in his class. Like, I thought he was kind of separate from those guys. And he just has never really, he's been fine, as I've always said, but he's never really stood out as a pro. The last 3 games, it's obviously the stats, but even the way they've used him too, like Colin said in the chat, like it's not even that he look to me. I don't think he looks different, but he looks a lot more confident. And I think like this kind of comes back to that Jalen Polk conversation, where it's probably he's more confident in the way he's being used. He's been targeted on 41% of his routes against man coverage the last 3 weeks. His air yards per target is over 12. And this was, you mentioned Wan'Dale Robinson, like that was where he was, especially as a rookie. And like, that's not his game. He's not a fake receiver. I think he's a real deal route runner, especially against man coverage from the slot. And to me, if you're a slot receiver who can, obviously we want you to beat zone, we want you to settle in the middle and be, you know, a reliable target. But when you can really access that next ceiling, it's when you can beat man coverage as a slot receiver, and we can have confidence to put you outside, you know, even if it's just 25, 35% of the game, you know, something like that. So to me, I think that JSN has always been, this is what's like crazy about it, is I thought he's always been capable of doing this. He just never has been asked. And I know what people say, it's like, oh, well, 2 of those 3 games, obviously there's no DK Metcalf, but 1, we saw it in this game with DK Metcalf. And 2, like, you know this, Nate, the NFL season is long, and the Seattle Seahawks coaching staff doesn't come in and think like, we gotta solve the JSN puzzle. No. They got a lot of other going on, okay? So sometimes
got a new center, a right tackle. They got a lot.
Yeah,
their
center retired in the middle of the damn year. All right, they got a lot of going on. Mike McDonald's rotating linebacker. He's got a whole thing. They're also just trying to put a program together. They're not immediately like, right, how do we make sure JSN thrives? But sometimes it takes things like chaos happening. Bye week. Like DK misses, or DK misses 2 games, and we're like, well, we got to change things up. What if we did this? And then it works, and they continue to do it. So sometimes like injuries can create opportunity and can create change for players. And I'm almost trying to abstain myself, because clearly I'm like biased in this discussion. And so that's why I wanted to ask you, because I think you came in a little lower on JSN coming into the league. But that's why I kind of think this is an interesting one, because I'm glad you're at Trust Me, Bro, because I almost, to be fair, I almost want to say like no idea and pass on it, but I do like that you're in the Trust Me zone.
Yeah, and talked about this plenty of times though. Post bye weeks changes are more indicative of anything else, because that's the coaching staff and everybody going like, okay, this is actually what we need to be doing. I was optimistic about Grubb, and so I'm still giving the benefit of the doubt, and how that performance was on Sunday and what the Seahawks did, I'm like still a little bit, I'm more bullish on them. I was starting to sell a lot of personal stock on that coaching staff. Just go, I don't know about Grubb, but that game was very, very encouraging, and just how they use it and just using it in smart ways. So that's why I'm buying this, because I think this is very real. And I know I talk about receivers blocking, but him going against Demonador Lenore, who I think is a very good player, sprinted at him on a play. I tweeted this, and they just butted heads. It's on the backside of a run. Jason could just give an iffy effort on that. I'd say whatever if I were coaching him. Big, oh yeah, you're not at the point of attack. I get it. JSN brought the heat on it and was like, and battled against Lenore, who was trying to battle against him. And I know it's just one play, and I'm extrapolating from that he's competing. And that means you're confident, because you want to do well. And then you're going, if I give effort on this, and you know what happened on the next play? They gave him a jet sweep.
Yep.
If you don't block, no reward. Rock. If you block, you get the rock, and you could see that confidence build. So yeah, I'm I think the arrow's pointing up, not only just for him, but really a lot of the Seahawks, and it's pretty cool to see.
Let's talk Calvin Ridley here as our last wide receiver. Just because you mentioned in passing yesterday that Will Levis looked, I don't know if you wanted to say okay. But Ridley,
there's some good.
Well, maybe that was it. It was just like there's actually a couple of positives to take away.
I have to study it, but
but you know what? Like at the end of the day, all we really need is Will Levis to be a functional NFL quarterback for Calvin Ridley to be useful in fantasy, and he's been beyond useful lately. He has been somebody that has smashed in the last few weeks. And he was someone that was completely unusable early in the season. Then they trade DeAndre Hopkins. And again, it's not even just been, decent game. Since week 8, 143 yards on 15 targets, 73 yards on 8 targets, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 targets, and then 58 yards on 6 targets this last game. So, but that's great. That's your fantasy wide receiver 3. That's awesome stuff. So I'll tell you what, I'm a pass. I'm still very skeptical, but do you have any more faith than I do?
Well, and then he had a long touchdown called back. They had an illegal formation or something like that. No, I need to study the Titans a little bit more. It's just so hard when they had Mason Rudolph in there, and I kind of don't like to study teams when it's just like, okay, they have a backup in there. And I know Levis isn't. Yeah, Levis isn't, some Pro Bowl quarterback or anything, but still the starter or the de facto starter for them. So like watching what they're trying to do, I mean, it's kind of like it's going to be the whole offense, just because with Levis is going to be up and down, and the ups are going to be super up. It's going to be more chunk play, which can lead to some boom games, I think. So I don't know where I feel. I think I'm more just the no idea man, because I literally am. But I do think it's just who else they have, what they are trying to do with Levis and make his world a little bit easier and everything. Ridley's going to benefit from that. Yeah, but like you said, if he's your receiver 2 or a receiver 3, that's not bad, because I do think there's going to be some boom weeks still to come. I just think also losing Hopkins cleans up Ridley's role. And be able to move him around, move him on ball, off ball, X, Z, all those types of things. Because Hopkins is kind of like in that offense is like, hey, you are here. Everybody else work around you and orbit like you're the sun. And I think now that like Ridley's role has opened up. So I think the usage isn't going to go away. It's just whether Levis can hit them, whether they can connect, and whether that. But I do think there's a couple more boom weeks that are possible here. Like, because this isn't going away. Like they're trying to make this happen. So I don't know if that's trust me, bro, or more of a no idea man with maybe a small idea.
Yeah, I mean, we got 2 games against the Jags. We've got the Colts. We've got the Bengals.
Oh man, this might be a trust me all the way.
Yeah, you've got me to no idea man, but my initial instinct was like I'm a pass. So We'll see.
No idea man feels good.
Yeah, that feels about right. Let's talk through a couple tight ends here. Jonnu Smith and Will Dissly, who have just become like, I mean, Jonnu Smith is now the 9th, like percentage wise, 9th most started tight end in fantasy on Yahoo. He's been added a ton over the last 2 weeks. Just today, Will Dissly is the 3rd most added player overall. Friggin' Will Dissly. Nobody will remember that I said this, but except Pat Doherty from Roto World. If he could vouch for me, I definitely made a few passing comments at the Fantasy Football Expo when we were drafting like these ginormous rosters in the Kings Classic, being like, Will Dissly's probably going to catch like 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. I didn't say, there's no record of it on a podcast. I think Pat is the only human being I've sent it to, but Pat, if you're listening, you're not probably, and no worries. If you're listening, you're the only human that heard me say this. You need to vouch for me because I had a witness. I had a witness. I don't think I said it on any podcast, which is embarrassing because I, as Nate said, I have like 100 podcasts and stuff like that. There should be record of it. Alas, there's not.
Notarized.
So, yeah, Pat Doherty can notarize it. Is he an official notary? Anyways, what an idiot. I'm not benefiting from it anywhere either. I don't have him on any fantasy teams. I'm not one of the 3rd most added people here because I picked up Dawson Knox like a moron over Will Dissly last week. What an idiot. Anyways, Jonnu Smith, Will Dissly, these 2 guys. Obviously, we take them case by case here, but I'm leaning like trust me, bro, on both of these.
I'm too.
Probably more so Jonnu Smith, just because we talked about this yesterday. The Jonnu Smith plays work; they're super efficient. But even Will Dissly, like his role in an offense that I really like here, that's not going away either.
No, I was kind of scared to say trust me, bro, on both of these, but I actually feel pretty good about it. Like the Dissly roll is not going away. This is the offense. And like this, and Hubbard, and they had some near connections. Like even 2 weeks ago, Hubbard had probably one of the throws of the year that Dissly dropped. And Herbert's going to keep coming back to him. Hubbard, for better or for worse, is going to read. He has some Kirk Cousins to him where he's going to like, this is the read, I'm going there. And that's a good thing if you own fantasy stock in some of these like lesser players, because that means they're still going to get opportunities. Like he's not just going to go, oh, I'm forcing it to Lad. Lad just naturally gets the stuff in the progression. Shout out, I guess, to Greg Roman for your passing game, but Herbert's executing like, I mean, truly MVP levels right now. He won't get it because the stats aren't all the way there, but you can build as good of a case for him as anybody, just his play. But with Dissly is he trusts Dissly. Dissly's going to get touches. Is it always going to be a seam route for a touchdown? Actually, I wasn't going to say no. I actually am going to say like, I actually might get those once, like an opportunity at a chunk play. So you're going to get the underneath stuff because Herbert will pepper them on underneath stuff, on check downs, and also just like some of the route concepts that they use. They're not going to use them as a deeper player. This has been happening week in, week out. He gets the targets. Herbert trusts them. And then now they got some designer stuff where they're not taking tight ends off the field. They're not a team that's like you have to worry. Like Dissly's going to be on the field a lot, and that's going to just lead to opportunities. So yeah, I feel pretty confident in Dissly and Jonnu Smith because like we talked about yesterday, just everything you just said, that role's not going away. And the other opportunities, it's the Rashee Rice argument with Xavier Worthy. Sometimes there's a souped up version of it, but it's like, okay, that deep speed that everyone's scared about with everybody else, it opens up the horizontal attack for the, like, I think sometimes with fast tight ends, we think of them as field stretchers, but field stretching can happen horizontally as well. And that's where Jonnu Smith really comes alive in this stuff. It's kind of ironic that Will Dissly is the one catching the explosive vertical play, and then Jonnu Smith is the horizontal underneath guy, but that's why they like him in that Dolphins offense. That's not just a 5-yard gain. That's a 5-yard gain that could turn to 15. That's a 5-yard gain that can turn to 25. Arthur Smith was on to something. This is
for sure.
He really was. Those touches weren't wasted last year in the Falcons. It's just that, everybody, we all like Kyle Pitts as well. But no, I'm on trust me, bro, with both these guys. This is very real. This is how the offenses are. There's not an injury or a guy coming back that I'm like, oh, they're going to take that away. This is their role in these offenses, and the quarterbacks trust them. And I think the play callers do too. So yeah, trust me.
Yeah, with Jonnu, you're right to point out the horizontal stuff. I mean, there's the one, and I'm just looking at the next gen route chart on him from this last week. There's the one, seam route that with the busted coverage that he took for a touchdown. But there's two like past 10 yards, one in breaker, one out breaker. There's stuff like behind the line of scrimmage that they got him to. There's the like horizontal breaking pattern that he took for the touchdown there too. I think it was like a wheel route or something like that that he got him from. So there's a couple of, that horizontal stuff is exactly how you want to use him, and there's all that space created. So I trust him. And then with Dissly, man, it's just since week 8, routes on the Chargers. Ladd McConkey, 85.3% route participation. Josh Palmer, 75%. Will Dissly, freaking 64.4% or 65.4%.
They trust him.
Like, yeah, the next highest tight end is Hayden Hurst, and he's run 10 routes in this span. Like they're using more 11 personnel, and it's not these big heavy. I mean, they get freaking Scott Matlock, that big ass dude on the field, the running back, full back thing. Yeah, so I mean, he's defensive lineman. He's out there. Role. He's the Pat Ricard role in the
Bruce Miller.
Yeah, exactly. So they got to always have one of those, big dude. But beyond him, I mean, it's a lot of 11 personnel. Like, I mean, Jalen Reagor has been getting on the field when Quentin Johnston's missed time. Quentin Johnston's been out there. So it's an 11 personnel team, and Dissly's on the field basically for almost all of the passing snaps. So that alone is going to be key because they also trust him as a blocker too. And this is a team that still wants to run the ball. So he's like never leaving the field. I'm with you. Before we throw it to our last break, we got a Nate's nerding out to talk through, and I like that you've just, and I almost put this guy in the wide receiver section, which is why I wanted to make sure we hit it on this.
Great.
You've got Christian Watson ?
I think. Just so everyone knows, I have always been lower on Christian Watson. I don't think he's a dependable player. He's not a very...
And so have I. So and the people that listening to this podcast are aware of that. So
I mean,
we're in the same boat.
I only talked to a couple other people about like prospect evaluation and young guys. You're one of them, and the other one is Dane Brugler, and all of us saw Christian Watson the same way. And so it kind of I try to have my own opinion, but when I'm hearing two guys I trust say the same things, I'm like, okay, you can feel his confidence growing. And maybe maybe it's just the last game. Of course, it's 4 catches for 100 something yards, but it's really more just other things than that. This is the same thing with the JSN stuff. See him blocking and not shying away from that. And this is something they've been trying to get him going on for 2+ years now. And they finally have got him. And things like details. He caught a chunk play. I want to say it was 3rd and long, where Jordan Love looks, he thinks he's going to have someone over the middle. It's actually really funny to watch how the coverage plays out. All the Bears defenders go over the middle of the field. It's like they have 3 guys and they all swarm to the middle route. And Love buys a little bit more time. And Watson was about to take it up and take it high, because it was an extended play. And instead he settled in the zone and Love hits him right in the chest for a big, a 20-something yard gain.
It's so critical.
And that I think that's just a small demeanor change for Watson. Again, you don't want to extrapolate too much, but I'm just using this one play as kind of to show how Watson has been doing. That's a difference in mindset. Watson going high is the easier. I don't have to worry about contact or catching in the crowd. He said, no, I'm planting my foot, stepping back down and catching it in the crowd in the zone. It's the smart play. And that's huge. I know this guy can run like a deer. I know this guy can take the top off. Now those in-between things let you do the shot play stuff and lets you stay on the field for that. Now we don't have to rotate you in and out and go, okay, this is a Watson play. Okay, it's not a Watson play, so now we need, Wicks in there, or we need Dobbs in there. Now it's like, no, Watson has to stay on the field. When you stay on the field, the usage comes. And for a crowded receiver room, Watson brings an explosive play element. He's coming down with deep catches now. His drops aren't cropping up as much. I was trying to look up his drop rate because I think it's halved. And again, he's battled some injuries and everything, but to me, it screamed a way more confident player. And I was pleasantly surprised how much I was liking him. Because I was starting to call him Big Ted Ginn, that's kind of, that's kind of what I was starting to picture what he was going to end up being. And now I'm seeing some more in between stuff. And it's really encouraging. I know this is easy to say after he had a big game, but I do think that there's more science to this. The Packers are going to be hard to predict with everything, but I went from whatever with Watson to now I'm trying to identify places I can get him on some of my teams. Just because it's interesting to me. They've always liked him. This is a floor baby because they moved up for him. And so he's going to try and make him work. And now that I finally see the in-between stuff happening, and that's really encouraging because he has so much talent. So yeah, I don't know. Christian Watson. Yeah, I guess I like you now. This is an upset pick for me. Trust me. I just want everyone to know that.
I mean, yeah, you've surprised me on this one, and here's kind of my thoughts on this one. You mentioned the drop rate, at least source I'm looking at, which is Fantasy Points data. They don't have him with a drop all year.
Okay.
They have him 5,
I don't remember one. So
yeah, they have him 5 for 6 on contested catches too, because that's another thing. He has been very on contested catches,
yes.
up, down, a guy that doesn't always play to that size.
Yeah.
I've always liked him more as a mover in the open field as a big freaky receiver than a play the ball in the air, big freaky
not
receiver.
A ball
but you mentioned bye weeks are a chance for teams to, reevaluate, reassess. They played him the most routes percentage-wise all year coming out of the bye. And you mentioned the blocking. To me, that's one thing that I think is going to be the thing to track going forward, because I talked about this yesterday with Sal, that I think that what they did with this very heavy run, heavy personnel, run heavy sets, Blake Sims played 30% of the routes. I don't know about your Blake Sims scouting report, but he was using depth tight end there.
Yeah. He actually had some nice plays, actually. Yeah, but he's
for sure. Yeah. But he's a blocker, and he played 30% of the routes, because I think what they saw is with the Bears, you can take advantage of them. You targeting the linebackers in zone coverage when you go on play action, and you can establish the run against the Bears right now. They have really declined as a run defense, so they went heavy run. They were the second lowest neutral pass rate team last week. The only lower was the Colts, and obviously they get Anthony Richardson involved in the run game. So of course, I wonder if that's a 1 week blip and we see more 11 personnel spread and Jayden Reed's back on the field. Because Reed, I love Reed, but he's not blocker, and he's not big like a Watson's big, and he's not big like a Romeo Dobbs is. But they took Wicks kind of out of the rotation which I mean, Wicks has dropped his opportunities this year. That just is what it is. And Watson has not. So I'm interested in Watson for sure. He's a guy that got added a bunch this week. I think he should be added a bunch this week. But I'm very interested to see what kind of personnel grouping do they throw out there week 12 against the Niners, because that's a different defense than the Bears.
It'll be the same. It'll be similar to the Bears, because you want Devondre Campbell on the field and you want their linebackers on the field. So it might be another 12 personnel heavy game plan from them. So that's actually interesting. You never know. LaFleur's so good, man. It's even the run game stuff's cooking. I tweeted this. He had a wheel route he caught in the red zone, and Jordan Love throws a beauty on it. But again, it was designed for him. It was a play with 12 personnel. They motion him into the slot. They kill and check into the play. All these are signs that they're going, let's get this guy going. They're excited that you only get so many plays. You only get so many designs. And so when you're taking one of your gem designs that I could tell that play was, hey, we caught him in this coverage because they checked into it. Again, read in between the lines of what the coaching staff is thinking. And that, again, is encouraging that they have him on the field in 2 receiver looks as opposed to other stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought the target or the route share and everything too, because it just feels that way. I just feel his role crystallizing a bit.
Yeah, and he's not as much as maybe Nate or I was lower on him. At least I don't think he's ever been a useless player. He has his uses, and they're finding the uses for him, which is good. I think he is a less is more type of player. We get him 4 targets and let's make those high yield targets. So that's the way you're gonna have to live if you're playing in the Packers receiver room, because nobody's gonna get a lot of targets in this room because it's so crowded.
Yeah, it's dart throws weekly.
Exactly. All right, let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll debut a new segment on some key injuries to watch and preview a Thursday night matchup between the Browns and the Steelers right after this. All right, we're back, and let's take a look at this week's injury report presented by healthcare.gov. In this new segment, each week, Nate and I are going to pick one injury we are monitoring that could have a major fantasy ripple effect this week. This can be a defender that leaves matchups to exploit for an offense. Maybe a starter goes down, opening a new role for a backup. This can be anything. But I think both of us, Nate, have maybe some matchups to watch. I'll start with my pick here, which is Roquan Smith's hamstring injury. He left late in the game last week. So far, this is obviously, again, we'll figure out details and things like that as the week goes on. But I think this is worth highlighting for a couple reasons. One, Roquan Smith has not played well this year. He has not played well this year, and I think he's been a particular issue for the team in coverage. And some of which is weird because he's been so good at this in previous years, but it's the communication errors and things like that that are opening up that intermediate level of the field for teams to exploit when you want to throw and get big chunk plays against the Ravens. Why I think this is so important is, well, one, that just opens up a huge variable if he's not there. Not that I think his backup's going to come in and fix all the problems or anything. I'm like, it might even get worse without Roquan Smith in there, because he's not playing to the level of his ability. But why this is so critical, Nate, we talked about it earlier in the show. The Chargers offense, Will Dissly, this is the area of the field he's eaten. Obviously, our guy, Ladd McConkey, is that vertical slot receiver. This is where he can rip big plays. So this is a pretty key variable to watch here, because this is, to me, it's not so much about the secondary that struggled with the Ravens. This is where big plays have been being had by opposing offenses. So if Smith is not out there, if he's even limited and he's already not played well this year, this could be a big time opening for Justin Herbert to be targeting Will Dissly and Ladd McConkey.
No, that's a great one. Great shot with Smith, because he's been more run first this year, run first defender anyways. Yeah, the coverage stuff is very real. They're susceptible to explosive plays. Even the thing is too, is when you're guarding like a tight end, anything with a linebacker over the middle, safety play is how you overcome that. Their safety play has been a little iffy this year too. So this is a great shout out, especially all those targets over the middle for the Chargers.
All right, give us your pick of an injury to watch here, Nate.
My pick is it's one that's been happening. It's been an injury, but it's been very, very prominent for this Lions defense that has been so good this year. But that's Fatu Melifuanu, who's their safety. And when he is hurt, that means Brian Branch no longer can play in the slot. And now he is a back safety defender, playing very well there, almost all pro level this year, Brian Branch is. But they're playing the Colts this week. And there's a football 301 / Yahoo Fantasy Forecast favorite that plays for the Colts, and that's Josh Downs. And he plays a lot in the slot. I'm sure you got the percentage handy, 90-something% probably from the slot, 80-something%. Very, very good. One of the best slot only receivers. The Lions, since Branch has moved into the back, rank 30th in combined success rate and explosive play rate against slot targets. So this is a Josh Downs. Primarily, he's going to be a heavy usage every week because it's the most dependable receiver for the Colts. But on top of it, this is one area that you can attack against this Lions defense that's given a lot of offenses trouble. And the Melifonwu injury is because of that, because of repercussions from that.
Yeah, Josh Downs runs 83.6% of his routes from the slot this year, and the Lions give up the most yards per game to slot receivers. So let me tell you what, if our little predictions here in this segment come true, Nate, and we get big Ladd McConkey and Josh Downs games, definitely reception perception, the bros there in the Discord will be ready to retire for the week. Let's just put it there. Like this will be two nice matchups with two vertical slot receivers that can beat man coverage, and there might be some matchups holes for them to exploit. So love these two picks here. Let's get into Thursday Night Football. Big game, division game. We got Steelers, Browns. I want to, obviously, we talked a little bit about this yesterday with Sal, but wanted to kind of expand on this with you, and this can help us get into some prop bets. But I'm really interested in who Joey Porter ends up covering for this Browns receiver room, because Next Gen Stats notes that Joey Porter Jr. has shadowed receivers on 65% of their wide aligned routes in 8 games this season, which is tied for the second most in the NFL with Deonte Banks. Only AJ Terrell has more outside shadow games. Porter does not travel into the slot. And you look at these receivers, obviously Tillman is the X. And by the way, all these, as I said yesterday, all these guys are benefiting from the Jameis Winston fantasy usage scam. They're all, I think they're all startable, basically, even in tough matchups. Obviously, Judy and Moore might be a little more boom bust. Even Tillman could be a little bit more boom bust, but like you probably have to play them just because they're getting so much usage. And Jameis is pumping up those pass. He's been doing this for like over a decade.
This is such a clock to this.
So if Tillman's the X and Judy is probably the flanker slot and Moore is primarily slot receiver, you'd think that Porter's not going to be covering Elijah Moore, but he has not been the guy they've targeted against like single high alignments. That's actually been so more Jerry Jeudy, if you look at the numbers, because he's more of when you get him inside, he will run vertical routes, and that's what he's best at. So I don't know. Tillman is kind of hit or miss in terms of where they go. They usually go to him in single high alignments, but if he's going to be in Joey Porter's coverage, it's kind of tough here.
That is tough. I know that. And shoot, like the only one that like popped to me when I was just even first glancing at it was like a Jameis Winston over a half touchdown. just one touchdown, because I think he's going to get it. Nick Chubb, and this is more run game oriented, but Nick Chubb just isn't 100%. And so that run game has not been a dependable thing for this Browns team. You know, they've had so many injuries and everything, but also just, they're figuring out the run game stuff, but that's was supposed to be their fastball. So that's why I think that we're going to see a little bit more pass heavy, and maybe against the Steelers defense, you can get some chunks. Like you can get after them. You can get them with a double move. You can get them with extended stuff. It's just, can we block their front? And if you think you can get it. But I just think how this flow is, that's the one, rather than try and parse the receiver stuff. It's like, okay, maybe more Jameis props. And then even with that, it's like, all right, completions, not so much. That's not really how I think Jameis is going to play this game. It might be, they have pass attempts at 33.5 on BetMGM right now, which is, that's
I was going to mention that is
pretty rich.
And it's minus 130. The over on it is minus 130. I mean, the passing touchdowns is just tough because over 0.5 passing touchdowns is minus 275.
Oh, so is that what it is? Okay, damn it, because I had the odds cut off. So that's the thing. Is there a 1.5 that we can juice that up to?
That's what I was trying to find, but
I know. I'm trying to find. So that's the thing. They got this one pretty much on lock. Like even with going for this matchup, like, is there a tight end that do you like David Njoku props? Like, because he's at 46.5 receiving yards.
And his usage has been great too, of course.
Yeah. He's the most dependable guy. And it's like, just with the Steelers defense too, is because they, they'll throw some blitzes and everything in there. But also just it's much better. So I don't want to say it's a weakness this year, but like the linebacker and the spine of the play is maybe you can get some tight end stuff, especially working out breaking routes where they're running away from the guys. A lot of the concepts that the Steelers like to run on defense, it's really to bait you outside. It's to make quarterbacks throw outside and then just saw it off. Like they run this, they call it palms. I don't want to get too much into it, but it's a cover 2, cover 4 hybrid. But how you kind of beat that is you get guys from the inside to work outside. Tight ends. So tight ends and slots is kind of where I'm leaning towards on here. But again, it's hard to figure out, is it Judy? Is it Eli Moore? Like, who's going to get more of that slot usage? So maybe it's Njoku at 46.5. So I'm going to go over 46.5 receiving yards for David Njoku. So I'll throw that one in there.
I think that we put that one on the board. That's an official one. Do you, I don't like these, but what do you think about Jameis longest completion over 34.5? I mean, that's pretty big, but that's
pretty big, but I actually kind of like it because that's how you have to beat the Steelers defense. Yeah. You have to catch them with a haymaker. Like, you can't go toe to toe with this defense. Like, you just can't. No. Like, they're just so big and so nasty. Like, yeah, you're going to get them a couple times, but you just don't want to live that way. Also a short week. Mistakes happen on a short week. So I don't know. I always like chasing some of those over longest completions and receptions, as you know.
I know, yeah. And I look, when I've tried to push back, I've been wrong. So that's why
I know now you throw it out, and I'm like, oh yeah. So yeah, here we go.
I think we do 30 because one of these guys I feel like is going to get a couple of bangers here. Yeah. And I just can't pick the receivers. Like I said, in fantasy, I want you to start all 3 of these guys. Like, I mean, if you, obviously depending on your lineup, but I think they're all like acceptable starts this week. Even though it's a tough defensive matchup, at least one of these guys is going to pop. I just can't pick which one it is. Okay, so I do have a disgusting one for Pittsburgh though. Calvin Austin over 16.5 receiving.
Love it. Love it.
So last 2 weeks,
I truly do love that. I really do, but keep going. Sorry.
I mean, I shouldn't be. This is so gross, but like 56.2 route participation the last 2 weeks for Calvin Austin. He is a vertical guy. I mean, all of these receivers have high air yard per target numbers because Russ is back there chucking it. But this is just 16.5 is so low. 12.88 air yards per target. Again, he's a vertical receiver. He had one big one that he dropped a couple of weeks ago, so that is part of this. But he's also a guy that if you just think about how this team has been giving up points too in Cleveland, they have given up a lot of deep production. They've blown a lot of coverages. I don't think they're going to be blowing coverages against George Pickens. I think that will be the plan. They're another single high team, another team that you can hit vertical shots from the slot. So Austin is their primary slot receiver. That's just where I landed on this one.
I love it. No, I really do. Like I'm joking, but not joking. I think that's a good one. I also, because they're maybe going to go more, Russ is just, this offense is run the ball in shots. It's like, it's very 2011 Wisconsin, and I love it. But the thing is, I don't think it's going to be a pepper game for Russ. It's not going to be a lot of quick hitters. The Browns defense, you can kind of run. They're going to load the box, but it's going to be more vertical, going to be more outside. Yeah. They run a lot of cover 3 and some invert stuff. So like that, what you can leave that. But when you face cover 3, you want to go more chunks as opposed to stuff underneath. So why I'm saying all that, under 16.5 completions for Russell Wilson.
I like it.
It's a little low number, but I just think this game script, I think they're going to be able to run the ball decently against this Browns defense, and especially if they can stay with it as the game goes along. So they're always going to be run heavy. I think the passing is just going to be, the third and longs, the occasional chunk plays. Russ has been checking it down a little bit, so that can inflate the numbers a little bit, but not as much as he was in Denver. So I don't know, 16.5 is lower, but I'm still going to go under there because I think it's more of that 14 of 20 game for Russ. And if you just look at the games that he started so far, 16 of 29, 20 of 28, 14 of 28, 23 of 36. That's 16 of 29 number against the Jets. We run some similar coverages, not all the way, but it's a little bit similar. That one kind of seems like a game script that I can kind of see happening with this offense. So I'm going to go under 16.5, which is going to be a sweat.
Stressful night. A stressful night for Nate Tice. Yeah, I love this. Okay, so we'll put 5 on the board here. And so, because we'll do the Winston one. It's so the minus 275. You're gonna have to parlay it or something. One of these other ones that you like. So
that's got like 5 asterisks next to it.
Yeah, but still. So we'll do Winston over 0.5 passing touchdowns. We'll do over Winston 34.5 completion, longest completion. The Njoku over 46.5. Then we'll do the Calvin Austin over 16.5 receiving yards, and then we'll do the Russ under 16.5 completions. So we got a lot here. These are good. I like these. These are weird, but this is going to be a weird game.
Oh, I know. The other sicko one I had was over Jaylen Warren receiving. He is at 13.5 receiving yards. So that'd be the last sicko one if you want to throw that one in there. We don't have to include that on the list, but if you don't want to go with that Jameis over touchdown one, you want one that's a little more even money-ish, over 13.5 receiving for Jaylen Warren. That would be my other one.
I like it. This is going to go. This is going to be a good game. I'm interested to watch.
Those are some sloppy bets.
Yeah, these are some despicable bets. Honestly, like you feel bad winning the money, but you should never feel bad winning money. So there it is. All right, that is going to do it. Packed episode for us today. We got through a ton of things. Nate, tell the people what you got going on the Yahoo airwaves this week.
Yeah, we have our Tuesday Football 301. That was a lot of fun. We went over the middle class of the NFL. I am writing about the Har Bowl on Monday. Ravens versus Chargers. Yeah, I don't know how I'm angling it. I think I'm just going to go the differences of these teams, I guess, I think is from last year. I don't know. But then also Football 301 Thursday with Charles McDonald. And then Sunday, we're going to start doing a Sunday recap show. So me and Charles will be doing that. So make sure to check out that episode. But yeah. And then me and you every Tuesday. We're going to, not next Tuesday.
No, not next week.
I'm sorry, as I say that.
Yeah, we won't, because we're not doing Fantasy Film Room next week either. So
couple of weeks. Spending Thanksgiving without you.
I know. Listen, I'm broken about it too. I'm broken. Well, I'm not. To be honest, Nate, I do enjoy you. I enjoy doing shows with you. A lighter week of shows actually don't sound too bad. Yeah, nothing personal. Nothing personal to you or the listeners. But
my only article is a mock draft next week. Oh yeah.
Thanksgiving week rules. All right. On that note, make sure you are subscribed to Football 301. Subscribe to this show if you're listening, and leave both shows 5 stars. And subscribe on YouTube. Leave a nice comment. Be like, hell yeah, Nate Tice rocks. Can't wait to see his hoodie next Fantasy Film Room episode. The whole deal. But for now, that is going to do it for us today. This has been the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast presented by healthcare.gov. On Friday, tomorrow, Andy Behrens and Tara Roberts will join me to preview all of Sunday's Week 12 action, and what a slate it is. Until then, we are out.